We're gonna do the Pappa al pomodoro, a Tuscan dish that I really, really love. And because of the 30th anniversary of Roberto's, we're doing a focus on the Garfagnana region, which is in the north center of Tuscany. It's a very traditional region. The dishes they make are very austere, let's say, however, very delicious. And if you make sort of a poll among Italians, many of them will say Tuscan cuisine is for me one of my favorites, even though it's the most austere of them all. I was 19 years old and I went to the Enoteca Pinchiorri, which is a fantastic restaurant in Firenze, in Florence, and they welcomed me with this Pappa al pomodoro. So it's very dear to my heart. It's just tomato sauce, bread, olive oil, Parmesan cheese. So it's very simple to do. However, what you get in terms of flavor, it's really outstanding. And of course, it's very important to follow a few rules. First of all, the tomatoes need to be of very top quality. We tend to use in Roberto's, because to avoid the fluctuation in ripeness of the tomato, very good pelati, which is pomodori pelati, which are tomatoes that are harvested in the south of Italy and then put in can. This is a particularly good brand from Naples, Gustarosso. And then very good olive oil. We have olive oils here from Sicily, from Liguria, from Tuscany, but it has to be a really fruity, nice olive oil with the character. And the other key ingredient is called pane toscano. And the pane toscano, it's an oddity of Italy because they don't put any salt at all in the dough. And of course, what happens is that all the leftovers of that bread, they leave it to dry and use it to make this soup. So in this case, what I did is I cut cubes of the bread, put a bit of olive oil, salt, pepper, and bake them in the oven just a little bit to get extra taste, the taste of roasted olive oil and bread. So that's all the ingredients. And really, it's as simple as doing a sofrito, which is onion, celery, and carrots, more or less equal proportions. I had a Tuscan teacher, Nadia, the wife of Aimo, from Aimo Nadia. It's a very famous restaurant in Milano, Aimo Nadia, but they are from Tuscany. Aimo is a Tuscan. So he used to call this battuto. And then they use this as a base for almost everything. I have to say that I've seen Tuscan chefs doing tomato sauce only with a bit of garlic, tomatoes, olive oil, and basil at the end. And they cook it very, very little time. So it's one of those things in Italy that wherever you go, they do the tomato sauce, the sugo di pomodoro, in a different way. They cook it for hours in the south. They cook it very shortly in Tuscany. We have a long relationship with a restaurant in Lucca called Antica Locanda di Sesto. And the chef, Aurelio Barattini, he came, I think it was 15 years ago, and did a culinary week in Roberto. So to celebrate this, we said, we need to invite Aurelio back. And Aurelio takes the Tuscan tradition, but he sort of refines that tradition. So the Pappa al pomodoro that he makes could be very simple, just like the traditional one with the bread and the tomato and the Parmesan, but he adds this sofrito, and he adds something else, which is he cooks leek, porro, very softly in olive oil until it's almost like a compote, and then he uses this to garnish on top of the soup. So it's sort of an elegant touch, but also the cooked leek gives a more sort of hearty, soupy flavor at the end. I certainly didn't try it before like Aurelio does it, but he does this touch at the end, really, really delicious. So we cook the sofrito, the three ingredients, as they say, the holy trinity of ingredients: celery, carrots, onion. And then just tomatoes. And these are raw pelati that we just put in the blender. Can be with a old-fashioned machine just to pass it through the sieve, just to break it through. Now these days, of course, you can buy it already chopped as a passata. The passata is sieved without the seeds and the skin. Depends how you like it. The old-fashioned chefs tend to do it rough with the skin and with some of the seeds. It's okay. Do it casalingo, so home style. And then we cook this sauce 20 minutes, half an hour. As I said, in the south, they leave it to simmer for days, for hours and days. And, but in Tuscany, as I said, we tend to do it faster. When I add the bread, you will see that actually the real technique here is to achieve a texture which is creamy enough by the addition of water and olive oil. Some chefs that want to pack a lot of flavor add broth, vegetable broth or even chicken broth. I don't like it because I want the tomato to shine through. And really the original one is only tomatoes, no broth. So yes, you add water, and very importantly, you add olive oil, and you create these textures very similar to what people do with the risotto at the end, which is to add the butter to make it creamy. So it's a proportion. I mean, if you really want to be an engineer of the kitchen, it's about 20% olive oil to the amount of water that you have. And then you get that really amazing texture. So the tomato sauce is ready. As I said, you boil it for 20 minutes, half an hour. Of course, in Italy, what they do is they do this sauce in advance. They put it in jars, they sterilize the jar, and they keep it all year round in a cold place, sterilized jars. So actually, when they're gonna cook Pappa al pomodoro, what they do is they go down to the basement of the farm or the house or you know, and open a jar of the ready-made tomato sauce. Now, of course, you can go to the supermarket and buy one ready from one of the good brands. But to make the Pappa al pomodoro, you simply take bread. One portion is 1 spoonful of bread. I'm going to do, say, a couple of portions. There, just enough tomato sauce to make it wet. I will add another spoon. And then I cook it together. I don't really cook it, I warm it up together. And here you have to take a decision. I'll add a little bit more. Here you have to take a decision, which is how much texture you want to leave in the Pappa al pomodoro. So some people leave a little bit of bread, especially if you toast it like this, a little bit of the bread crispy at the end. Not crispy, but that you can bite. And other people cook it in a way that is completely dissolved. I am one that think that is better when you have some texture left, that is not completely reduced to Pappa al pomodoro. So something like this. Then a bit of salt, of course. Fresh pepper. And I'm going to switch the fire off, or leave it at least at very, very minimum, and do the following. Take some fresh basil and put the whole leaves like this. I don't even chop them because they become black and might be too aggressive even. But if you leave the basilicum just like this, in whole leaves, it's good enough. It sort of infuses. And I say I turn off the heat because what you want is the basilicum to infuse, like a tea, like when you put a tea bag in water, to infuse the soup, not to flavor it, but just to infuse it. Then, as I said, olive oil. This is a very classic olive oil. And then you add, that's a couple of spoonfuls of oil. And then you turn it around. And then it's a little bit shiny. And then you almost get in there. So this is what you have now. And you can certainly eat it like that, like this. I'm going to add a little bit of water because I think it needs to be more liquid. But as I said, this is a question of personal taste. So, you know, until you reach that texture. And of course, if you think of pasta with tomato sauce, this is the same thing, but using bread, leftover Tuscan bread, to do it. I will try for salt. Almost there. Okay, you have two options. I'll show you the classic one. It's just this. And a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top that you can put at the table. Basil leaf and more olive oil. And this is the classic Pappa al pomodoro. I'll show you a second version. And the second version is how we are serving it now in Roberto's in the menu. This is how we do it. Instead of the Parmesan cheese on top, okay, you can put also Parmesan cheese on top, but we do a cestino, so a little basket with the Parmesan cheese, only grated Parmesan cheese. You bake it in the oven until all the liquid evaporates, and then it's flexible, and then you can put it upside down in a soup spoon, and then you create this shape. You can also do it in microwave, and it's even faster and easier. So voila, same thing with a crispy touch. And of course, if you want a little bit of extra Parmesan cheese, voila. This is it, Pappa al pomodoro, or as some Tuscans say as well, Pappa col pomodoro. Traditional way and Roberto's way, from Garfagnana, courtesy of Aurelio Barattini of Antica Locanda di Sesto, which is open from 1387, can you believe it? A restaurant from the 14th century is still running. That's Italy for you.
Lust je nog een video? Dat treft, want er staan er meer dan 1400 voor je klaar. Abonneer je op het YouTube kanaal of schrijf je in voor de nieuwsbrief, dan hou ik je wekelijks op de hoogte van nieuw materiaal.